So welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, since I know that the participants will be coming from all around the world. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Frida Susidhum, I'm architect, urban planner, philosopher, and I'm part of the cabinet of the UCLG Secretary General as a special advisor. So welcome to this opening session of a new series of webinars that rural urban linkages of UN Habitat will be developing on the new normality and the recovery. We are trying to articulate the efforts done at global level between different levels of governance, and especially in the rural urban areas that for us are the safeguarders of nature and the survival of the planet's iconicity. So for us, these webinars are not only about the general understanding of governance, but also about the people and their life systems in the present and in the future, of course. I'm especially glad to moderate this session since it is a new moment to generating new kind of synergies for the recovery and building on accumulated knowledge between UN Habitat, rural urban linkages, and UCLG. Indeed, the role of the rural urban is key in its different dimensions and can and should play a key and critical role in the moment we are living. So the recovery can find one of its drivers in the energy coming from these areas and from its governance. I will not be longer as an introductory. I would like to thank the team of UN Habitat, rural urban linkages, and all the participants that are here. And for that, with any further delay, we have the honor to have with us today a high-level panel with Mr. David Nabarro, the Special Envoy of the United Nations Secretary General for the COVID response. We have also the UCLG Secretary General Emilia Saiz, and also we had SHIPRA NARANG SURI, Chief of Urban Practices Branch of UN Habitat. And this will be the first part of this session. And we are very excited to have them with us to accompany us in thinking this new normality. So our first question will go to Mr. David Nabarro, Special Envoy. Mr. Nabarro, how would you see the intent of the United Nations in having a global response as a means for local and regional governments? And what can you tell us about the response given by the rural urban linkages to this crisis? And what should be the new normality for these areas that are guaranteeing the planet's resilience in the present and in the future? Please, the floor is yours. Mr. Nabarro, yeah, welcome. It is a great honor to have you with us. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking the time.
Ali, thank you. Pleased to be here. Thank you.
Firdaus, probably Mr. Navarro didn't hear the question, so if you can repeat.
So if...
Firdaus, you're muted.
Okay, can you hear me now? Okay, thank you. Yes, I was saying, Mr. Nabarro, yes. How would you see the intent of the United Nations in having a global response as a means for local and regional governments? And what can you tell us about the response given by the rural urban linkages to the crisis and how they will be implicated in this recovery? Thank you. The floor is yours.
You're very, very kind, and I'm sorry for being a little bit unclear just now. I just want to start by acknowledging the importance of UCLG having this particular forum on COVID-19. So the three opening comments. Number one, this virus is here to stay. It's not going away. And humanity is going to have to learn to live with this virus in a way that enables us to continue with our social, our economic, our political, and our family lives. And to do that, we have to be able to work together, and we have to do it in our localities. Secondly, one of the things that we're seeing about this virus is it tends to affect poor people particularly profoundly. Poor people because they live in conditions that make it hard to prevent the virus being transmitted. And secondly, because they are also often not having the resources they need to be able to maintain physical distance, to protect themselves facially, and to keep good hygiene. Quite simply, this is becoming a disease of poverty. And thirdly, I want to stress that when new outbreaks occur, they always start locally and they build up locally. Although we hear reports saying there's a lot of COVID in Latin America, or a lot of COVID in Mexico or Brazil, or for example, what we're actually finding is that the outbreaks are very much confined to small focal areas. So what does that mean? It means that the only way to deal with this ever-present threat of COVID is through local level organization. And that's what I'm seeing. In Brazil, I'm seeing 365 cities organizing local community networks to help get on top of the virus. In Kenya, I'm seeing community groups using a variety of different techniques they've developed over the years for being strong in the face of this virus. In South Africa and Western Cape, the communities there, again, working together, helping each other to cope with some of the really bad impacts of the virus on food and food systems. And then throughout India, a lot of really important collective action by local communities to get on top of the virus and to look at the virus through their own perspectives, their own mental images. So in answer to your question, therefore, I would say the only way to get on top of this virus is to act locally through coordination at local level, through people being at the center. And it is, I believe, through local governance mechanisms that different communities are going to be able to get on top of it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nabarro, for this answer. I think we are aligned, and I'm sure our Secretary General, Emilia Saiz, cannot be more agree with what you have said. So the floor is yours, Emilia. Based on the information gathered by UCLG during the lockdown and the COVID crisis, what has been the immediate response by local and regional governments, and how is UCLG preparing for this new normality for and together with the local and regional governments?
Well, thank you very much, Firdaus, and greetings, colleagues from UN Habitat. Dr. Nabarro, it's really great to see you again. Always a great defender of localization when people didn't even talk about it yet. He was there with us, very important to acknowledge. We don't even know whether there is going to be a new normality and whether we like that term, actually. What we have noticed is that local and regional governments, the territorial approach to governance that is in all sizes and shapes around the world has had to react very quickly to a crisis, which was a sanitary one and not always directly within their competencies. However, the public service delivery in their competencies has been extremely important for that sanitary response. And everybody has come to understand a lot of the weaknesses that we already knew we had, but now we can much better understand how much they impact everything else. We have all been suffering and claiming that it was no longer sustainable to have the kind of structural inequalities we suffer from everywhere in the world. But we lacked sometimes the empirical proof of how important this was going to be in managing all kinds of other things, and how critical good governance is in addressing this issue. Well, now we have empirical proof for many of these gaps that we have been facing. And at this moment, when we know well that there has been a shift between from the private approach of things to the public approach of things, all populations around the world are looking at governments for solutions. We are very concerned as a constituency of local and regional governments because our public service delivery ecosystems are very, very fragile. And they are not talking about it in the international debates, in the national debates. So we need all the help we can get to bring the debate to the international community about public service delivery, about localization, because we still think that the Sustainable Development Goals are a perfect framework to address many of the challenges that we are going to have in the future. We are still struggling with these things. So it has been very critical for us in these live learning experiences that we have been organizing with cities around the world. We have identified 10 things, but I will only mention 4. That we think that we will need to address. I mean, I am sure mayors here and other colleagues will address the rest. But we believe that pushing together for a universal healthcare systems will be critical. Right now, solidarity is more than doing the right thing. It's about security and it's about efficiency. And universal healthcare systems are part of that parcel. The second thing is that we are convinced we need a global approach. We need a stronger multilateral system. We need to make sure that everybody has access to vaccines, that everybody has access to materials, and that when we take decisions around this pandemic, we don't only talk about closing borders, but we talk about other things. And for local governments, which do not have borders, this is very critical. Then the third thing would be we will need to rethink our government. How do we govern in emergencies? We are noticing there will be more emergencies. There have been more emergencies in the past. These cannot go to the detriment of a strong democracy, a strong inputs from communities. If we hurt even further the trust of communities in their governments, there will be no way out. And then finally, a call for equality. It is unacceptable that the weakest, the most vulnerable, those are the places where the virus is hitting first, and it's no longer acceptable for our societies to have this. The sacrifices that we are going to ask to our generations, but also to future generations that are going to be paying for this debt, will be extremely high and extremely painful if we don't use them to actually go about a better design, a better model in terms of production and consumption, in terms of the links between cities as a system of cities, which is built in solidarity. And I think this dialogue on the rural-urban continuum is extremely important from a territorial perspective. I'll stop there because I could talk the whole afternoon. But and I hope that all the other points will be brought up, among others, by SHIPRA, and I see Mayor Sefiani there. Thank you very much, Firdaus. And Dr. Nabarro, please keep up the good work and do not forget local governments.
Thank you very much, Emilia. I think your 3 points are very clear and will help us deepen a little bit the dialogue after the intervention and the delivery of the remarks of SHIPRA. SHIPRA, tell us, how is UN Habitat envisaging this new normality in the cities? I know UN Habitat is driving a kind of process to have a new look into the ways of working, of thinking the cities, thinking governance as well at national level, of how to advise the governance at national level, and also implicating the local and regional government. We are aware of that. The question is, how do you see the new urban agenda as well as the 2030 agenda being used in this new normality, and how it will impact the rural-urban linkages? Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Firdaus. Very nice to see you. David, nice to see you after a few months after the climate summit. Emilia, it seems like we're on a journey together. and it's a good thing. It's a good thing, indeed. I think this, if one thing has come out of this live, before I go to your questions, Firdaus, it is really this deepening and strengthening and reinvigoration of our partnership with UCLG. And, you know, I'm very, very grateful for that. I think it was so important, and it is so important. So very nice to be here, and thank you for asking me to share some thoughts. You know, when the Agenda 2030 was crafted, when the new urban agenda was crafted, we already knew that its success and its realization would depend on how well national and local and regional governments work together. I think that was very much recognized, and that's why there is a lot of reference that is in particularly in the new urban agenda, which we pushed many things in it together, Emilia, on the importance of localization, on the importance of local and regional governments. And what COVID has done is really sent us a very sharp reminder. I think it's shown us that whether it is the health impact or the socio-economic impact of COVID, it cannot be addressed without looking at a coherent approach between different levels of governance, between across different spheres of governments, across different scales of territories, and without vertical and horizontal coordination that we've always talked about, and without policy coherence across these different spheres and scales. The live learning experiences that we've heard from in these different sessions have shown us what local governments are already doing, but also the struggles they're up against, you know, and the kind of support they need, and the kind of engagement they need. I wouldn't say support. I think the kind of investment and engagement they need from national governments. It's not support. It's not charity. It is a partnership that national governments need to recognize and understand that without that engagement, it is not possible whether to meet the goals of Paris or to meet the goals of SDGs or targets of SDGs, or to realize the new urban agenda, or to battle COVID and its effects. So that is one thing I want to emphasize. For us, the integrated territorial approach for UN Habitat is exemplified in many areas of our work. And I again hope that the new normality, or the new, what we are leapfrogging towards, we don't even know what we're leapfrogging towards yet, will look at these four things. The first, I think, is the international guidelines on urban and territorial planning, which underpin a lot of our work, which say basically that the urban and rural dichotomy is a false dichotomy, that you have to look at it in a territorial approach, and planning has to be done looking at flows, looking at connections, looking across territories. That's the first. The second thing that exemplifies our integrated territorial approach is our work on national and subnational urban policies. That you can't just do plans at city level, you really have to have the system of cities that Emilia just mentioned. Without that, any development is unsustainable. The third, of course, is our work, which has gained tremendous momentum over the past year and a half, is this work on urban-rural linkages, within the framework of which these conversations are happening, and which is you know, when I was a planning student, urban-rural linkages were out of fashion. Regional planning went out of fashion when I was a planning student, and I think the recognition that urban and rural are intricately connected through the movement of goods and people and food and services and you know, upstream and downstream, that recognition over the last year and a half of our work has been phenomenal. And I hope that, you know, when you see migrant labor moving en masse from urban areas to rural areas, you realize that these links are not in a vacuum. They're not theoretical links. Industries are shut down, migrants don't want to come back, they are stuck. There's all of that movement, food insecurity. I mean, so these are not in a vacuum. And finally, our work on metropolitan development and governance through our Metro Hub approach. I think all of those are exemplifying the work that we do. For us, and this is really my final and most important point, for us, local and regional governments are at the center of the equation. They play an absolutely fundamental role, and in terms of both horizontal coordination, vertical coordination, cross-stakeholder coordination, and priority setting. But they need to have the resources, they need to have the capacities, they need to have the mandates to be able to do so. And all I can say is we will continue to walk on this journey together, Emilia, with local and regional governments to really make sure that these aims and these aspirations are met. I'll leave it there for the moment.
Thank you very much, SHIPRA. I would like to go back to Mr. Nabarro. How is your expectation when you see this critical role of the local and regional governments? How would you expect from your position to have a global impact, to have an impact at global level, better said, from the role of and responsibilities from local regional governments? Of course, UCLG as being the global network of local and regional governments is there pushing and advocating for what, as Emilia was saying, we have identified as key challenges. But how would you see this critical role to be enhanced and highlighted from your position, Mr. Nabarro?
Thank you. As I said when I was saying my last remarks, the way in which outbreaks emerge is very much local, and they are very confined to local areas. And then perhaps you might get 3 or 4 local outbreaks, they coalesce together and they become bigger. And then we end up with something explosive like we saw in Wuhan or in Iran, in Qom, or in New York. But because we have to remember that every outbreak starts at local level, it's really important that the response is local. And that's where SHIPRA, in bringing her observations together and showing the importance of strong local level organization and autonomy, and Emilia stressing that you can do this, but you need a strong multilateral system as well to support it. I thought, yeah, that's how I see it. I see it as a combination of the local and the global. So what do you get from the global? Answer, you get the best possible accumulation of evidence to emerge with strategic principles that are most likely to be effective everywhere. Bearing in mind this is a new virus, so we're learning all the time. But the beauty of the multilateral system is that it's strategic principles, as well as norms and standards. Then the actual work is done locally, because in each local setting, the actual presentation of the virus, as well as the conditions of people who are caught up in containment efforts, are very locally specific. And that's where we get the need for adapted responses, but within the overarching strategic principles. Third and last point, all this works if your data are sufficiently decentralized so that there is the capacity to inform local actors. If you've got a government that for some reason is maintaining very aggregated data, that's not much use for the local actors. But if disaggregated data are available, that's terribly helpful. And the countries that are most inspiring me have strong strategic principles consistently applied. At the same time, they have disaggregated data, and they have local territory organizations that are moving ahead and organizing things at local level. That's the way of the future, in my view.
Thank you, Mr. Nabarro. I think it sounds like music to our ears. Emilia, Saiz, please, how do you see this statement of Mr. Nabarro offering mechanisms to join directly, to generate this channel, a direct channel between the local and regional government to the global COVID system, COVID response from the United Nations?
Yeah, it's nowadays, I mean, he has just described, David just described how the virus reacts. It's very difficult to find only a local issue nowadays, and that's the challenge with all the governance. I mean, if you look at our governance challenges nowadays, the model of consumption and production, our housing systems, our challenges with equality, our issues with climate change, adaptation, the use of public space, it is extremely difficult for any local leader to govern paying attention only to their own city or their own settlement or their own local government, because it's all linked. You might be facing a situation as a local leader where you have no competence in migration, but you still have migrants and newcomers that are neighbors in your streets, and that is a global phenomenon. So for me, this link that David is describing between the local and the global is extremely important. Now, I usually say that the international community is starting to understand the urban era, but is starting to understand the urban era already from an obsolete perspective, because the notion of cities that we are handling when we talk internationally is not where we are already, like SHIPRA was saying, our new notion of metropolis, the link between the metropolis and their surroundings, the fact that we are looking at polycentric governance and no longer a very big city with only one government that is at the center of it. I think this will be extremely critical, and this pandemic has only made it very clear, because we have noticed how dependent we are in our food systems, in our production systems, and I guess these were things that we haven't been happy about for a while already. And now it has become an issue of security to ensure that we consume from proximity, that we produce in proximity. This in no way implies that there isn't a global approach that we need to have. It simply implies prioritizing differently. It simply implies co-creating governance with communities beyond the physical space as well. We are already talking about, of course, what it implies now, the digital era. How many more of us are going to be working from home, although we need to fix the digital divide? What does that mean for rural areas as well? What does it imply in terms of slum dwellers that might move away or back to other parts of the territories? These are the types of things that we will need to be thinking about. And we need to be thinking about these things from a local global perspective and breaking the paradigm of thinking global and acting local, but rather thinking local so that you can ensure that communities' needs are answered, but acting globally with the best of the knowledge that we have, like David was saying, with the best of the data, the best of the interpretation, and with solidarity at the center of it. For us, this transformation in governance will be extremely critical, and it needs to be connected with the debates that we are having around national urban policies in many parts of the world. It needs to be connected with the discussions that we are having on health systems, but also on housing and food production. We are going to have one of our live learning experiences on democratic access to food and food systems in a couple of days, because we have noticed that this is the only way to look at future local economic development as well. So I think it's all intertwined, and I think that medium-sized cities, intermediary cities, like we would like to call them, those cities that can actually act as a hub for city provision, are very critical in this debate, and that's where the urban era lies. It's not in the Beijings, it's not even in the Barcelonas or the London or the Buenos Aires. It's in those intermediary cities and the role they can play. That's where the quality of living will be defined.
Thank you, Emilia. Thank you very much. I think there is, I think you have, sorry, I was on mute. I think you have such a key question that is the digital factor, because for the rural-urban linkages in the world, it has been also during the crisis a factor of exclusion, and not only a factor of connecting between them. So it is one of the key challenges that were encountered by the rural-urban linkages and the life systems that are developed there. SHIPRA, maybe you would like to react to this. I know Mr. Nabarro needs to leave. Would you like first, maybe under SHIPRA authorization, to leave some last words?
Just to say, if I may, just thank you for the honor of being here. I really was so pleased that Emilia made the point that really you have to be local in everything. And that when we're operating in a national or global analysis, it only has meaning if we use the local mindset. And I just want to congratulate SHIPRA and the team in Habitat and beyond for all they're doing, but also to UCLG for stressing the importance, particularly in some of these intermediate settings, of just getting it right and getting the local actors into good space. I'm taking your remarks with me as I move ahead to advance the work I'm doing, not just on COVID, but on the sustainable development more generally. Thank you for the honor to be with you. Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you, Mr. Nabarro. It has been a privilege as well. SHIPRA, please, would you like to react to what has been said? And also saying here, you have had a question in the chat saying, elaborate and comment on the importance of rural urban linkages, value chain, and their capacity and limitation for a post-COVID. How would you address this key question as well as resilience question?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think Emilia already said that, you know, when she talked about proximate economies, proximate production, you know, we've been living in this globalized world for so long that we didn't realize what happens actually when value chains get interrupted and global transportation systems and global links and movements get interrupted. And by we, I mean people like you and me. You know, because we still go to the supermarket and buy whatever packaged food is available if there is no local production, and it's okay, right? But what this has shown us, what COVID has shown us, that really the importance of proximity, the importance of shorter supply chains, which people in the climate space have been saying for years, and saying, you know, you're spending you know, the amount of emissions, the carbon footprint of your blueberries flown from wherever is huge. You know, buy local, eat local, and I think COVID has shown us the fragility of those expanded, distant supply chains, and has made us recognize whether it is what the slow food movement used to talk about, or it was, you know, so that I think is very important. For me, the ultimate point is that of resilience, Firdaus. You really hit it very much there. You know, as planners, we say resilience is built by mixity or by diversity. Whether it is the diversity or mixity of land use, because we know that monofunctional land uses don't work. Whether it is the diversity of economic activities, and COVID has shown us diversity, the mix of economic activity, because monofunctional economies relying on a globalized, interconnection, but having no connection with their local, spaces don't work. And a diverse social mix that, and I want to also connect the fact that, you can't ignore what else is happening in the world around us, which is the whole, which is the importance of social cohesion, which is the breakdown of social cohesion and breakdown of societal trust. So communities that are kind of homogeneous also don't work, and resilience doesn't come if you do not have mixity in terms of physical, economic, social, spatial. And that is something that can only happen if we really look at proximity, both proximity from within a neighborhood, then proximity within neighborhood to, the city, and then the city to the region and to the, I don't like the word hinterland because somehow it's not nice, but city to region or territory. I think it's quite important to have that proximity. And I loved what you said, Emilia, and I think this is going to be one of those quotable quotes about intermediary cities will define the urban age. You're absolutely right. And intermediary cities and the regions around them will define the urban age, really. So I just want to leave that thought and leave it there.
Thank you very much, SHIPRA. I cannot find better words to say it as you have said it. For us, intermediary cities and the rural urban linkages are key drivers for the transformation that is needed and the opportunity that is given through this recovery, indeed. Emilia, I know you don't have that much time. Would you like to bring some closing words? No, it's fine. Okay, thank you very much. SHIPRA? Yeah, okay, thank you. So we will be going to the second part of this session, listening to ICLEI institution that is a partner, one of the partners, the key partners in the climate and biodiversity agenda for UCLG. And also after ICLEI and Mr. Kumar will be having the president of the World Forum of Intermediary Cities of UCLG, that is the Mayor Mohamed Sefiani. So, Mr. Kumar, Deputy Secretary General of ICLEI Southeast Asia, how are you envisaging this new normality, and how for you the lessons have been taken from this crisis? The floor is yours. Please unmute yourself.
Yeah, I'm trying to, but good to see SHIPRA. Hi, and also Emilia. Hello. I didn't know that you guys are there initially because nobody has shared me the complete speakers list. And first time I was listening to Dr. Nabarro, who is, I think, a very important point what he has said. Which you need to act locally. A simple example, maybe if I have to tell them from my country, SHIPRA knows about this country, where I live in India. Initially, they were talking about national rules, national coordination with all the states and everything. So all that has been stopped with one single, I'm not against any government or anything, but with a simple order saying that, okay, everything will shut down from tomorrow onwards, and things have not looked into what is really looking for actually. You have a lot of migrant people sitting on road, going through the roads for, I don't know how many of you have seen the articles coming, like a lot of people are traveling 2,000 kilometers, 1,000 kilometers by foot, by road, by cycles and all. So these are the issues which have started, and later on the governments have realized, both national level and provincial level, we cannot superimpose the rules from, I'm sorry, there is a power cut here, but I can continue. There is, we cannot impose the guidelines or rules from the top, from the national level, but you need to act at the local level. Unless until if you do that, you cannot control the situation. So the things have changed. I'm not saying that they don't know these things, but they have not really thought about it when they have taken up those decisions. So that really changed later on, which we thought that, okay, you need to act. Not even at a city level. Right now, we are talking about it at a zonal level. We are talking about it at a street level, how the things will change. Because we cannot even shut the entire city also. Like, okay, if you have cases here, if you have cases in one apartment, in one housing society, you please stop it there itself. Like you make sure that not spread further onto that. So that is one of the issues which has really, I will say, I think all our previous speakers were clearly talking about that has been proven once again, I will say, in the present situation, that without local planning, without regional level planning, you cannot act on various issues on that. So that's one point which has really shown and which has proved again on that thing. The other point which I just want to put it, I think Emilia and SHIPRA was also talking about, it's not just the cities are creating issues. Cities are part of the solutions also, which has, I think I learned in my planning when I was studying 25 years back. But it is now again and again and again and again, it's proving that yes, at a city level, city mayors or city political system, city administrative system can also look for solutions. Some of the solutions have come in Indian cities, or also maybe in other Asian cities, what I talk about, are really the solutions for any issue, not just maybe because it has come as a COVID, that's why they have applied these rules and these actions. But any action, if you can really look for a solution at the city level, you can really solve that. And that is actually really helped the other cities or other peers to take it forward, to apply into a larger level and implement those actions on that. So that's another point which has proved again and taken it forward on that. And the third point, which I have a presentation, but I'm not showing that here, but I'm just saying some of those points are there in the presentation, which you can share it with all others. That's not an issue, but they can look into. The third point, which is also on the financial issues for the city government. Major worry is that because of these lockdowns and there is no tax revenues have come, and though there are property taxes have, actually the cities are collecting that, but the rest of the other taxes which the city is supposed to take it forward has not come at all on that. So what should they do? What should the cities do if you don't have revenues to go ahead and implement actions on ground? I was actually asking some of my colleagues to look into. I was also looking into something. Most of the national governments thought about stimulus packages only to an industries, only to financial institutions and other things. But nowhere I have seen a stimulus package for maybe a local government, a stimulus package maybe for a provincial government. Can you give some money to these people and so that they can go ahead and implement that? Again, I will use the example in India or maybe in some other Asian countries which I have seen. I also heard some African countries, some of my colleagues. These local governments are really asking the national governments, can you help us out? Okay, I can plan, I can take forward my action on ground, but I don't have money. How do I implement these things at this time? Maybe can you give us some money? Can you give us some support, resource support, maybe financial and other resources can do that on that. That's another point of that. I just want to give 2-3 more solutions which I talked about in my presentation. One thing which has really, I think Emilia, SHIPRA was also talking about these things. Intermediary cities, what they are talking about. We are talking about rural-urban platform. Actually, we have tried and tested rural-urban platform, and I called it as a rural-urban platform. A rural-urban platform which we have created in few cities in India has really helped us now at this time. Simple example, when the lockdown happened, some of the cities could not get their essentials. Even vegetables could not come from where, because they are coming from all over some other place. That's not that, because they have not tried and looked at into their rural areas where they can get some of those fruits, some of those vegetables come to a city area, city market, and they can also eat it. They don't need to wait for apples coming from New Zealand or from some other country or some other places within the own country itself. So what really happened is that rural-urban platform has really helped some of the cities in India to plan for food systems, to plan for supplies, also the local supplies. Actually, this is what which also helped on that. And then other things is like within those essentials, going from one area to another area within the city also. And some of the cities, they don't have even plans that, okay, how do I bring where the essentials come into my city and where they will go out from that, and how do they distribute within the cities. So we as ICLEI helped a lot of cities in Asia and including Indian cities to create a supply map, to create a rural urban linkage, like, okay, this is the material available here, you take it and you start consuming it here, and if you need some other material, we can maybe get it from here, get it from there also. So that's one rural-urban platform which has really helped them. And also Indian cities for the last, I think you must have all heard about the smart cities initiatives started by the government of India. In 45 cities out of 100 have really created command and control center, which may be not a big thing for some of those European cities or some of the US cities, but in Indian system, really that helped now, this command and control center within the city, where a city administrator or a city mayor can sit there and clearly see where the patients are, where the issues are, that actually, so can we plan something locally there so that can help with this thing. So this command and control centers really helped during this particular system. Everybody was thinking maybe a lot of money is going into the system, creating the system, but really the system which helped right now to solve these some of these issues on that. And last point, which maybe I'll stop here and maybe happy to answer some of the points. The cities also now need to look for various other sources. bad thing I will say that in some of the Indian systems, Indian governments are really increasing the taxes on maybe liquor or on fuel. Petrol and diesel prices are going up within the cities because the cities are really looking for more money so that they can look into that. But that is I say that is not the good solution. They have to look for maybe a integrated solution. I think Emilia and some others are also talking about not only the stimulus coming from there, but actually how do maybe around a system, how do the cities can get money from various sources, not just one sources of fuel or liquor or increasing some taxes. That's not going to be useful for them. And they may have to look for maybe bonds, public-private partnerships, all those real tried and tested methodologies which will be useful also at this time of juncture actually, which can be useful. And other thing which I think some of the again Southeast Asian countries, Indonesia and Philippines has also seen is how do we maybe it's not just giving the money to the city governments, how do the services can also go through through the people where the need is there. So some sort of a system needs to be created within the city wherein the services can be implemented by monitoring at the city level, but through involving NGOs, involving other civil society organizations, so that the services, the benefits can reach to the migrants and other households really where the need is there on that. So these are the few of the examples which I just want to share it with you, and thank you for offering this slot. Thanks Emilia for inviting us, and Camilo, I think he was in touch with me. Thanks for UCLG, for UN Habitat and all other colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, Kumar. Indeed, it looks like India has been, even with the conditions it knows, India has been able to manage with innovative and creative solutions. And in the same sense, India has been positioning a long time ago with the program of smart cities, indeed, and technology today has been key during the COVID, and will surely play a key role as well in the next stages. So let's go now to Mr. Mohamed Sefiani, President of the Forum of Intermediary Cities of UCLG. Mr. Sefiani, one of the big results, the most important results of the World Forum, the first World Forum, was the concept of life systems and how to keep them gathering and building up the resilience through the rural-urban linkages as well, through the food systems, through the climate. So how would you tell us the intermediary cities have been living the COVID, and what should be the place of the intermediary cities for the recovery? The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Firdaus. Good to see you. Hello, Emilia, SHIPRA, and all my friends. First of all, I will thank UN Habitat UCLG for inviting me to this very important webinar. As you know, my city, Chefchaouen, is an intermediary city which is located in the north of Morocco, and until now it hasn't registered any positive case of contamination of COVID-19, but we can say that more than 70% for economic activities was stopped during more than 3 months. And this situation, zero COVID-19 and activity stopped, is the characteristic of the majority of intermediary cities in Morocco. We have many cases in metropolitan cities like Tanger, Casablanca, Rabat, etc. But the majority of intermediary cities, we don't have that. But we have a very negative impact on the municipality finance, because we stopped the collection of local taxes, and of course the revenue are limited, but the expenses are not stopped, including the compulsory expenses such as employee wages and essential public services. Likewise, we had even given food support to practically 20% of the vulnerable families in the city, and the access to the city was very limited, and it was done on the basis of special authorization. And in terms of neighborhood management, the city has been divided into sectors in neighborhood groups, and access from one geographic area to other was, of course, very limited. In this context, in my city, in many intermediary cities in Morocco, in this context, we had created new neighborhood markets that we say here proximity markets for the marketing of products, especially agricultural food products, which was reached as from the surrounding area, rural area of Chefchaouen. I think this rural-urban relationship remained during the pandemic, and many people who came from the rural area to get their supplies at the city level and to benefit from several public services. So I agree with you that 2 years ago we had the UCLG forum of intermediate cities in Chefchaouen, and we have many conclusions. And we believe, I think, and I believe that proximity, solidarity are very important, and especially in intermediate cities, and the intermediate cities can offer that. And the pandemic has shown to us that that is one opportunity for us in all the cities, metropolitan and intermediary and very small city. Then we can valorize this relationship, this linkage between rural and the urban area. Now we are preparing the new normality, and we believe that the global agenda as the SDG and the climate action and etc., that is very important to show us the route, the right route, with the réajustement. I don't think with the. Yes, you can help me. Restructuring, but in the basis of the SDG. Yes. So now it's very important that intermediate cities can do it. And I know that many in Morocco, in Africa, in all around the world that looking that, and the linkage between rural and urban area is one of the essential pillars of our new plans of recovery plan. And we are doing that with participatory approach. We are organizing in my city, for example, many meeting, short meeting, digital meeting with consultative institution that we have, participatory institution that we have in the city, to show us in concrete actions that we can implement now in these days, in these weeks, because we have an emergency, especially in economical and social aspects. So to do that is, I said, proximity is important. So to the local products it's supporting local products, commercialization, marketing of that, and the sensitization of citizens to use local goods, agricultural goods who come from rural area, and the crafts and all local business, local services, all that is very important, because the mobility in our country, the borders, international borders are not open yet. But we can say, for example, in many intermediate cities like Chefchaouen, Now we Chefchaouen, we are the cities, the urban citizens. We are 10% only in the province. 90% are rural. So we can bring together one local economic that is sufficient to boost this economic dynamic in this period, critical period. Economic, so marketing of local products and ecotourism. Ecotourism for us is very important, and 5 days ago, national governments opened the national and the local tourism. So we can receive now tourists from around Morocco, not around the world yet, but around Morocco. And we have launched one campaign of territorial marketing with his name is Amazing Chefchaouen Awaits You. It's for tourists and for local investors and for national investors to have a new normality of the cities, of the city, and based on nature and heritage. So people are looking for that now. After 3 months in their homes, they want to discover the nature, discover our heritage, our culture, our gastronomy, our local products, and we can do it without the connection, the real connection with the rural area. And this characteristic not is only for Chefchaouen, but for many cities, intermediate cities in Morocco, many intermediate cities in Africa, many intermediate cities in all around the world. And this now is new for us, because 2 years ago, in our first forum of intermediate cities, we talked about that. It's one of the points of the declaration of the forum, of the UCLG forum. But now people have seen that. And 3 months in our house, 3 months of no economic activity, 3 months of no social activity, but we can do it with at local level, at provincial units. In the provincial, we can work with the rural and urban, because we can do it alone, only the city and the rural aspects, but the vertical integration with all with the multi-governance. Now we have many infrastructure projects that we have launched this ultimate days, because we are looking for a normality, a new normality of psychological normality, because when citizens see the projects again of infrastructure, we have a great project with the national support of government, national government support. So it's good for at psychological aspect and for economical aspects. So we have infrastructure, we have so many actions that we will launch in the few days and a few weeks for is integrated into our green recovery plan, and is the promotion and the marketing of the local products to do it at in our places and our touristic area, and to receive national touristic. And I think in 3 or 4 weeks we will be able to receive international tourism, and our borders, I hope that will be open. So the proximity is one of the potential of intermediate cities, and we see that in this pandemic, with no access to national mobility, no access to international mobility. So is the reality, and is one of the keys of our plan, recovery plan. And we want to work on this aspect and to have a short circuit of consumption, of production, and to valorize the nature, the local culture, the local gastronomy. And I will not that because Chefchaouen, my city, is since 2010 recognized an intangible heritage for UNESCO. For we can say the Mediterranean diet is a culture of alimentation in Mediterranean that is based on the local products and local culture of alimentation. I think all that are the pillars of the new normality of the city and the new our plan, recovery plan. And finally, I can say with the support of UCLG, we have elaborated the Chefchaouen Vision 2030 for the implementation and localization of SDG. Thank you for those who worked personally with us and with the support of Emilia and other partners. So now we are working in the actualization of this because we have a new data, new context, and we have a decade, important decade of this decade to have 2030, but to have other priorities that we discovered in this period. In Morocco, we have one plan. We say the new model of development of Morocco. We have one national commission. We are working on that, but he needs this commission needs 6 months more to do his work because we have a new context of pandemic and we have discovered a new priority. So is what we are doing in Chefchaouen, is what we are thinking about the role of intermediary cities is very important in the present, and it will be more important in the next future. Thank you. Thank you very much. I am open to respond to your questions.
Thank you so much, Mayor Sefiani. It's always a pleasure to listen to you and to see how is the ground living indeed the reality. I mean, we at global level we can have as many theories as we want, but we need to build them from the local, and we need to build them from the ground realities. So otherwise, it's not worthwhile to develop anything. I would like to pass on before going to the questions, Mr. Kumar and Mr. Sefiani. I would like to give the floor to our discussants. So we have as first discussant Oliver Hillel, Program Officer, Convention on Biological Diversity. Mr. Hillel, what would be your takeaways from this session?
Thank you, Firdaus, and thank you to UCLG and UN Habitat for this wonderful discussion. I was really glad to hear Emani and Mayor Sefiani, particularly on the links on nature, because of course I work for the Secretariat of the Convention on Biological Diversity. I had 2 comments here. The first is how much urban consumption, the modes of urban consumption influence the rural landscapes and the coastal landscape and even the ocean management. So by redirecting the design of urban consumption and the rules and modes of production that happen in cities, in fact, we affect ecosystems that are thousands of kilometers away. My home city of Sao Paulo, Brazil, many years ago stopped buying illegal timber. That reduced deforestation in the Amazon significantly, because all that wood that was harvested illegally was, of course, being bought in Sao Paulo. So this effect on landscape is very important. And the second point, which Mayor Sefiani also so very well noted, is that we need to restart the economy in ways that are different than the ones that we did before. Greta said that, and Georges Monbiot said a bit maybe radically that we should put a do not resuscitate sign on the sectors and subsectors of the economy that have depended so much on subsidies and that have not delivered a sustainable development. So we should put our money now into those that will develop a greener landscape, exactly, for instance, as those connections that Mayor Sefiani mentioned in terms of privileging peri-urban producers and those who can then assure food security and nutrition. Thank you so much.
Yeah, fantastic intervention. It was I personally align completely with your statement, Mr. Hillel. Let's go now to Amin, legal specialist in UN Habitat. Can you tell us your takeaways, please?
Thank you. Thank you very much for all the speakers. It's been a very interesting discussion to follow. And there have been many interesting points that have been raised, so I don't actually know even where to start. I fully agree with Dr. Nabarro in his statement that this is a local crisis as much as it is a global crisis. And from that, I would pick one aspect, which is the economic aspect that also Mr. Kumar raised, on where local governments are going to pool the resources for the post-crisis recovery, which I find is a very valid point for, I think, everyone at this stage. And the fact that the poor are the ones who are the most affected, as Dr. Nabarro pointed out, but not only because of the conditions they live in, I think, but also because they often get their livelihoods from the informal economy, which has suffered a lot due to the crisis and the restrictions that countries have put to place around the world. And even though at this time the burden is mainly on the national governments to provide the additional grants to subnational governments to finance the expenses related to the social services needs and to support the vulnerable populations, but it would be very useful to explore also other formats, perhaps equity financing or improving self-financing capacity at the subnational levels. But also, I think it would be really worthwhile to look into the mechanisms that can support the informal economy. In general, laws have been among the main contributors to the growth of the informal economy, because often the processes for securing the business licenses, other related permits, they are such cumbersome and costly processes that most poor people can't afford to get into the formal economy. So bringing the local mindsets and the innovation also to the legal frameworks to promote inclusion of workers in the informal sector by mediating the competing demands on urban space, as well as to support a progressive transition to the formal economy by establishing simpler and clearer and more affordable processes would really be needed. And this could help in a way forward. Also, the legal frameworks could extend access to social protection and support microfinancing and financial inclusion programs. And then I have a shorter second point on the inclusiveness. I'd be very curious to know a little bit more from the speakers, for example, from Mayor Sefiani. How have the local governments been able to uphold their commitments to the participation and the citizen oversight mechanisms at this time when the traditional forms of participatory governance that often require the physical presence are not possible? There are many existing e-governance tools, but even these at this point in time might be inadequate because the access to the IT infrastructure in the slum settlements or the poor neighborhoods or in the rural context are not necessarily always there. So I'd be curious to know if there are any innovations on this area, if anyone could bring a little bit more on this. And I think perhaps Mr. Kumar could also give us a short introduction to the Ruben platform, which sounds very interesting. That's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think we have already a list of questions to our speakers. Let's go now to the third discussant, Karim Hussein, Senior International Development Expert and Strategic Advisor. The floor is yours. Please unmute yourself. Thank you.
Can you hear me now? So thank you very much, Firdous. This has been an exciting discussion and highly relevant at this time. I've been privileged to be engaged in the urban-rural linkages debate with UN Habitat and other partners here since 2014, when I was at IFAD, representing IFAD in these processes, the International Fund for Agricultural Development, and then also working with FAO and with UN Habitat on other key players around the WOOF 7 and afterwards. So thank you very much for the opportunity to comment and feed in ideas after these fantastic case studies and experiences from India and Morocco. Emani Kumar rightly points out that COVID-19 is challenging cities around the world with regard to supply chains and with disruptive impacts on critical services, with the loss of jobs, with business closures, and the shortage of medical infrastructure. But it's also, while there's the major health impacts, there's also all the key issues relating to revenues, governance frameworks for cities and intermediate cities and local authorities, but then the issues relating to food systems, the availability of food, and all these issues relating to shorter food chains and food safety. So I think it's clearly challenging for cities, this COVID-19 outbreak and all its implications, from the health through to the economy, but also very challenging for the regions around the cities and the rural areas in particular, and their populations and their organizations, sometimes in more extreme ways than on the cities and urban areas themselves. And so rightly, I think the two speakers have been on the other, and the earlier speakers have emphasized the importance of both rural areas and their organizations and their populations, and the contributions they can make to find and provide solutions to the COVID-19 crisis, as in the same way as we emphasize the roles of intermediate and major cities in addressing these issues. I would say that this pandemic has exposed the bottlenecks in food systems in countries, and especially in urban areas where some 70% of all food produced is consumed, processed, or further distributed. However, in the rural areas, many smallholder farmers and small-scale producers depend on markets to sell their produce, and many markets have been closed, as was pointed out by the two speakers. And they buy the food that they themselves need, often in those same markets as well. So the restrictions on movement are very grave for both rural and urban dwellers. And in that context, food production, I think, plays very important roles in increasing the resilience of local people and households and their households. This leads me to think that, well, this has been highlighted by the two speakers, but innovation all along agricultural and food value chains in both urban and rural areas, at both ends in a way, is required to respond to the current seismic changes in food systems and to safeguard the livelihoods and lives of all actors along food systems and agricultural value chains. Now, the innovations that are needed, some have mentioned these already, the digital innovations, the platform, the urban platform, and so on. But there's also innovations that are required to address some of the fundamental issues around COVID-19 and food supply chains. And that includes enhanced measures to ensure food safety, maybe subsidizing access to clean water to wash hands and to wash food, and also to electricity for defined periods, and finding ways to enhance hygiene in food transportation and making available protective equipment for those working in the agricultural and food sector. Some of these things are being done, especially in the MENA region, actually, and being supported by the international community, but governments are taking their own initiative there as well. One thing I wanted to highlight that comes out of the presentations, moving quickly now, was the diversity of situations and regions that's been mentioned already. Some live with fragility, some are in stable contexts, but in both, the diversity of the situations, the agroecological situation, as well as economic situations, and the livelihood needs of different groups of people need to be taken into account in any response to ensure that responses are tailored to local realities and the needs of vulnerable groups. This was emphasized, and I think the approaches in Morocco are very interesting here, where we were talking about the participatory approach to local governance, and seeing, as we move forward in this crisis, seeing how all socioeconomic groups can be included in the response, and thereby not forgetting issues such as that are dear to the Sustainable Development Goals, such as gender equality, the role of youth, and of rural and urban-based women and men. Perhaps I would like to stop there, but maybe can I say a couple of points on
briefly? Yeah, please.
Yes.
Briefly.
So I just wanted to end by saying that there is much evidence that demonstrates the interdependencies between rural and urban areas, and we have done a lot of work on territorial approaches that can look at rural and urban areas as a whole, but understanding their distinctive nature and how they are connected to broader systems. So I wanted to emphasize that territorial approaches remain, I think, continue to be useful in addressing the broader sustainable development objectives that we're looking to achieve, and also particularly safe and inclusive food systems across space that link urban, rural, and different groups in those areas. Okay. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your reactions. Keywords we have been listening indeed all along the session. We have 13 minutes left, and we had questions to our two speakers, to which I would like to add some questions that were put on the chat. For example, to Emani, Kumar, details about how the rural urban platform in India have been created, managed, and funded, also to the speakers. The central part of cities could be considered sustainable, while the challenges on sustainability are pushed toward the periphery and rural surrounding areas. Are there any ideas or solutions for improving the rural urban governance? While I think Mr. Sefiani will know how to develop this one on the cooperation. The next one will be more to Emani as well. What are the challenges and opportunities emerging with regard to local policy formulation within food distribution, organizations, and food security? And the capacity of cities are not the same, especially when urban sectoral policy is absent. So how can we deal with these issues? Let's begin by Mr. Kumar. You have 5 minutes to react. Thank you for your understanding. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for these questions. Is there any way you can show one slide of my presentation on the rural-urban platform, or you can't? Just go up. Yeah, the slide number 8.
And maybe this presentation will be made available to the participants on the UN Habitat website.
Yeah, go ahead, please. Yeah, this is the rural-urban platform, what we have created in one of our recent projects in 2 cities, but that has been actually now taken over by the government of India, and also planning to try to expand it to various other cities. So here you can see that we have taken up the panchayat. Panchayat is the small form of a political area, I can call it, and you have a city. So you have commissioner and additional commissioner cities, the central portion where that is the city government. above that is maybe a district which we were looking into, because the rural area is not under the mayor actually. So rural area is under the district administrator, district collector, what we call it, and you have a city on that. So we have three administrative setups, or two administrative setups have come together. One at the district level, that is overall on top. And then you have a panchayat or a rural administrative boundary, and also a city administrative boundary. So we brought all three of them together. And one important point I just want to tell you, it's not that new creation here in the Indian system or some other cities in Asia, but what happened is it is only for if it is a water supply. If it is coming from outside, then only the district collector come into picture and say that, okay, where should we use the water? Is it for the urban areas? Is it for the rural areas? Is it for the agricultural? Is it for everything? So that is the district collector will decide on that, and that's it. That's the end of that. But what we said is that take that example and try to solve each and every issue what the city is facing. Either it can be food, it can be water, it can be the waste, because the cities also don't want to keep the waste within the city area. They want to throw it outside, where the rural areas are saying, no, we don't want your waste because you created, you keep it with you. This thing. So where this waste goes, actually, is it at the rural area? Is it the urban area? So a lot of these issues, what we started looking into and started addressing through this particular platform, which has now become like some sort of a governance model, and I think Mayor was also talking about the intermediary governance, intermediary cities also. Similar examples, I think, what there in other parts of the world also. So this particular example has really helped cities to understand what is that their issues, the rural areas, what is their issues, so that maybe a common solution for both the issues has come together, and which they have implemented on that. And it also helped really for a district administration where the finances needs to be allocated. Is it to this particular issue, or is it this particular issue of that? So on the financial front also really helped the city administration or the district administration to prioritize those points and take it forward on that. And within the city government, what we said is a stakeholder communities, stakeholder committees, wherein the stakeholders will decide that, okay, today we will, this particular budget year, we will put budget into this particular activity and take it forward on that. So that's how we created this, and it's really helped into the governance issues, really helped into solving a lot of issues related to water, waste, or food, basically food traveling from rural to urban, this thing, or within the urban areas, how it can be distributed and all those things. So I don't want to go into too much details, but this information is also there on our website on the report, which can be taken it forward on that. And one of the major issues solved in few cities, and which now through national government program called Namami Gange, addressing the river Ganges issues. So all the cities on both sides of the river Ganges has looking into this particular one of those examples to solve those issues, because there are a lot of waste coming up, a lot of wastewater coming up into the Ganges river, and also addressing these type of issues. But they're looking into that and taking it forward on that. That's another point which I just want to add it on that. And the water resilience point of view also, that actually, so it's not just only the COVID related or anything, but also issues related to the resilience part, water resilience, the food resilience. So all those climate related issues also it started addressing on that. So that's one thing. And I think for other examples, what I just want to make is also we looked into home gardens. I think the food, what people are talking about. So few cities have now come together and said that we want to have a garden at the backyard of each house, whatever that place is available, so that they can create their own food systems, so that they can maybe give it to others if you have more areas. So home garden facilities, which some of the cities have started, and also helping the cities, the communities to grow their own food and can be distributed into other parts of this thing on that. And if you can go one slide below, 2-3 slides below, there is another good example on the. This is about the decision support tool followed to this thing. That is okay. Next. There is one on the outcome-based financing. I think that's another good example, which one below further. Just go down, go down, go down. This one, actually.
We need to conclude, Mr. Kumar. Please.
Sorry. Yeah, that particular example on the outcome-based one above this is a green bond market. No, you're going down, go up. One more. Yeah, this one. Outcome-based financing. I think you've gone 2 slides up. This particular outcome-based financing is happening in cities in Philippines, Bangladesh, Cambodia, and as well as in Indonesia. I think what is really happening is the city governments are giving money for the services to be provided by the communities, and they will make sure those people like migrants or the laborer, the poor people, what Dr. Nabarro was talking about. So the services will be given it to that particular community. Actually, the benefits will go all the way up to that, through a chain of interventions, through maybe the community chains. So once the community gets that particular service or particular benefit, then only they will get the money actually back to that. So this service providers. So it's outcome-based financing, which has been used by various cities in Asian parts, and that is really also helping now. Because we don't know, like previously the money, I don't think that it is really going to the need, but this particular
system. We need
system,
to wrap up, Mr. Kumar. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, so that's where I'll stop, and yeah.
Sorry about that. It has been so intense and so interesting. I would spend like 2 more hours here with all of you and thinking a little bit more on all these things, but you know, it's not in my hands. And I thank you all for the commitment.
Sorry for
Mr.
Sefiani,
thank you so much.
Mayor should talk more. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Mayor Sefiani, please.
Yes, Fedra, thank you.
Briefly.
Briefly, yes, very
yes.
briefly. I know. Yes. No, I think that the participatory approach is very interesting in all models of governance, especially in local governance. And we can lose that in period of crisis. So in this pandemic, in the management in Brazil, and now in this phase of the new normality, it's very important to work with the participatory institutions that we have in the city. So in that, they have one question: is physical meeting? Yes, in the first period, we didn't have possible physical meeting, but digital meetings. But in the last weeks, with the physical meetings, but reduced numbers of representatives of our participatory institutions. We have, for example, a meeting with all parties that we have we have 4 parties, political parties in the municipality. The opposition was with us in all the process. So during the pandemic and now preparing the future, it's very important to integrate all political parties. We have participatory councils, for example, participatory council of gender, participatory council of youth people, and participatory council of climate and sustainable development. We had meeting with all those councils to analyze what we have during the pandemic and preparing the new normality, the green recovery, and the very, very good ideas that we receive from people, because they know that better than us in many aspects. And we are now implementing many ideas in concrete actions. And the item of informal economy and reintegrating this informal is a priority for us, for national government, but with the local government to work together. And we have many ideas, many projects in this, and many intermediate cities. We have this phenomenon of informal economy, because we need inclusivity, and we have very small companies in the intermediary cities, because we don't have big and multinational companies in small and intermediate cities. So we are working in that aspect for social and solidarity economic, because it's very, very important in the new phase of normality. And finally, I can speak about. I don't want to say about smart city as a technological city. No. It's a digital transformation. Digital transformation of city is very important, and we have now a national program for support of cities and intermediate cities. We don't have many resources for that, human resources and financial resources, but with the support of national government, we are doing that, and we have some successful actions that we have done, and we are preparing a new action for the digital transformation of the city, of municipal service, and for the economic, like to support business, local small business, to have the marketing and the business with the support of our digital transformation. So I can resume that, and the biodiversity too, because we are talking about the ecological transition, and with the health problem that we have now, health and nature and biodiversity and the good air are associated. That's how we associate that to that people understand more and more and better what's the challenges, climate challenge or the biodiversity challenge, what this linkage between rural and urban culture, economy and all. And finally, I can say the intermediate cities in intermediate city live now more than a third of urban population in the world, but the potential of this intermediate cities in the world is bigger and bigger, and the pandemic showed us that is a reality, not only a theory. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mayor Sefiani. Yeah, I have so many takeaways that I'm able to make a new discussions only myself and talk for 20 minutes more. I would like to sincerely thank everyone that has been participating. It has been incredibly enriching and interesting. The first part on the global management and the global positioning of institutions and the global point of view and strategies that are being built, and how does this or not align with what is going on the ground level and in the people's life every day, the daily life. So I think we are done by today. I would like to have the last words from my colleagues Camilo or Florence or Thomas to close the session. And I cannot begin talking. If I begin talking, I will not stop. I would have so many things to say. It's fantastic. Thank you. I'm deeply grateful, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Firdaus. This has been a very interesting session. I just want to ask if Remy are you available just to deliver a couple of remarks and close the session? If not, I can just continue.
Just continue, Camilo.
Okay, thank you, Remy. So yeah, so this is, we have come to the end of the session. Thank you very much to all the people that have connected today. This is the first session, as I mentioned, of the Policy, Legislation and Governance section. I'm just going to share with you and announce our future webinars. So the next one is going to take place on Friday, July 19. The topic will be the post-COVID city, lessons for the future in law and development. And this webinar is jointly organized with the Institute of Advanced Legal Studies. And then our next session will be on July 14. We are going to touch on the topic of human mobility, migration, and territorial responses. So you will receive the information soon. Also, would like to say that all the questions that you have been posted in the chat today, we are going to consider that for future webinars and also for our work as an input, and we will try to respond to all of them. So yeah, this is all for today. Thank you and bye-bye.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.